issued by a task force that then had identified the lack of cultural equity in the existing granting program, Grants for the Arts. Grants were shown to go overwhelmingly to large organizations that had limited, organizations that had limited reach to the culturally diverse audience. The Cultural Center programs were created and funded through the Arts Commission to add to the Neighborhood Arts Program. In the ensuing years, all the arts funding has been cut as much as 20%. The state and federal programs are essentially gone. In 2006, the Arts Task Force reiterated the same concerns expressed in the 1980s, that we have underfunded community arts and services to artists, and pointed out the funding cuts affect our systematic undermining. The funding cuts affect our systematic undermining our neighborhood arts, cultural events, and cultural spaces. The group at the time recommended a better coordinated arts infrastructure that would then be responsible to the arts element of the San Francisco General Plan. There have been some positive steps. The recent addition of the Artists in Community program through the Arts Commission that pairs individual artists with social service organizations, but we still lack coordinated policy and programs necessary to achieve the goals laid out by the master plan. Structural fragmentation of our art support and policy still hamstrings big picture coordination and planning and has allowed funding cuts to systematically erode our arts community. What steps would you take as mayor to restructure the delivery of the arts in San Francisco to deliver equal access to the arts for all communities across our city and a renewed effort to include arts more successfully in our policy and plan? That's Mr. Herrera, if you would start.
Thank you for the question. And first I want to compliment the Arts Democratic Club for reforming and for building on the great work that was done by the Arts Task Force in 2006. And I think that what is important is to recognize that the challenges that were laid out by the Arts Task Force in 2006 built on what we already know was happening back in the 1980s. And everybody always talks a good party line about the importance of the arts. Let's just look at what the official arts policy of San Francisco is: to recognize and sustain the diversity of the cultural expression of art in San Francisco. And that's great. We all mouth at that. But what is really important is to look at what the reality is. The reality is that funding has been cut dramatically. We've seen dramatic siphoning of hotel tax revenue. We've seen abandonment of the neighborhood arts plan over the course of the last 10 or 15 years. We see no attention paid to individual artists. And we see poor stabilization efforts for small and mid-sized organizations. And why is that? Number one, because we have really no strategic plan for the arts citywide. We have a lack of a citywide focus, and we have a lack of coordination between arts agencies and other city departments. So this really comes down to having the political leadership to put in place what we all know needs to occur. First and foremost, we have to put our money where our mouth is. We have to restore the hotel tax revenue to the arts industry and give arts agencies control of the dollars that are dedicated to the arts, and not have whatever money is there to be fragmented and not coordinated by the main institution that should be responsible for arts funding. Number two, we need to restore the neighborhood arts programs and expand those programs for both communities that aren't as lucky to have a community-based facility like this one, and for young people. And third, we have to reorganize programs under the Arts Commission and the Grants for the Arts. And I have to tell you, I've said in my questionnaire that I'd be open to have there be a merger with each supervisor getting one appointment from his or her district to a new formatted centralized art commission, which could coordinate and have greater control and coordination effort of the money that is out there. And what would that do? The goal of that would be to create a more substantial and stable support for both large institutions, but more importantly for neighborhood cultural centers and community-based arts nonprofits who have been too long neglected in the city and county of San Francisco. Then we can have a real conversation about how we can develop new programs to promote economic development here in San Francisco that involves the arts industry. Because we all know that the arts industry and the arts community and artists themselves are vital contributors to the economic engine of San Francisco. But we need to live up to what we mouth in terms of policy and have the institutions in place that can coordinate, that can promote, that can increase the visibility of and demonstrates to the public how important it is to have a vibrant arts industry that helps provide cultural opportunities in communities and also provides opportunities for our young people.
Thank you. Senator Leland Yee, same question.
No.
Can I ask one question? Could you just let us know where we're at on time? Yeah.
2:50 into it.
Okay.
He gets 1 minute, and then there's a rebuttal, and then you do the same thing. So it's 5 minutes. So you have a 1 minute follow-up of what he just said.
Sure. Dennis.
A question, I think.
First, Dennis, I really appreciate. I think your clear understanding about some of the dynamics that's going on. But clearly, one of the other elements to all of this is that everybody seems to want a piece of the arts. And how would you propose we gather all the maybe similar but sometimes disparate interests in the arts and come together as a city? What ideas and suggestions might you have?
I think that was something that I tried to highlight when I talked about the structural merger that I would champion in terms of the Arts Commission and the grants for the arts, to have there be one institution of which each supervisor has a appointee from a particular district. So you are getting a citywide perspective that also has control over arts funding, which now is disparate between different departments. And they would be in control of it, and it would have a neighborhood flavor which represents the interests of every neighborhood in San Francisco. So it could be community-based, looking out for large and small institutions, and individual artists to make sure that we are promoting a unified and coordinated arts and cultural policy which benefits the entirety of the city of San Francisco.
Let's see, Senator Yee.
5 minutes.
5 minute question. Do you want me to repeat the question, please?
Sure.
What steps would you take as mayor to restructure the delivery of arts in San Francisco to deliver equal access to all arts for communities across our city, and a renewed effort to include arts more successfully in our policy and planning?
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate all of your presence here, particularly the Arts Democratic Club, sort of the new and revitalized Arts Democratic Club. I remember the days when I ran in early elections, and I guess Jeff Jones was. I don't know if he's still around.
He's right here.
Oh, well. Remember those fond days, and one of the things that San Francisco is to be commended about is the fact that they care about our arts so much, and it is built into our master plan. Just like the housing element, we have an arts element. And unfortunately, the implementation of that arts element has been rather short. And it is, to some extent, because of that you now have, you had the task force that said, we've got to do a little bit more to move that issue along, and really appreciate, I think, the task force and everyone's participation in that. And I think it's because of my respect for the work of the task force that I want to articulate a little bit more some of its conclusions and how I would see those particular conclusions. I think that there are a variety of different interests that are out there in the area of arts. You have the Arts Commissions, you have the grants program, you have the symphony, the orchestra, the performing arts, visual arts, you have neighborhood programs, nonprofit organizations, and then you also have profit-making ventures in the city. And everybody seems to be interested in the arts. And so what I think would like to do is to look at streamlining some of the activities. I think, as Dennis mentioned, I'd like to also see a consolidation of the Arts Commission and also the grants for the arts. But we need to kind of, I believe, go beyond just that. What I like to do is to, have someone coming out of either the mayor's office or coming out of, some organization within the city that deals with arts to be that person that is going to touch, every single aspect of our art community, because that's extremely important. We've got to ensure that every voices, every idea, every notion is well integrated into an overall arts agenda, arts policy, arts program. And so bringing all those individuals together is extremely important, and that sort of interdepartmental type person needs to have the cachet to go to these different interest groups and come together and facilitate some coherent plan for this particular city when it comes to art. And I think that we've got to look beyond just simply whatever assets we have within the arts community. We ought to be looking at our schools. We ought to be looking at our libraries. We need to look at other departments within our city that may have some empty space and may have some facilities that may be available, so that there are additional venues that are available for performances, for presentations of some sort. I know of so many different groups that would like, in fact, to put together some kind of an activity, but what they find is that there's no space. There's no space because we're not opening up the space for individuals, and yet we see libraries, we see cafeterias in our schools, we see so many spaces that are just kind of left empty at night. The doors are locked, gates are closed, and we ought to open that up. So that's the kind of change that I want, where we coordinate things a lot better, we are talking to one another, and then we're looking at any and every space that's available so that we have visual and performing arts available to everyone.
Leland mentioned a little bit about, in passing, schools. I get a minute, right?
Yes.
A minute? Okay, and one thing that is a priority for me is we have Prop H funding, which is scheduled to expire in a couple of years, where we give up to $60 million to the school district to help it succeed in its mission, and at least a portion of that goes to what's called SLAM. And I've advocated on the campaign trail that I want to not only extend the Prop H funding, but expand it from $60 million to $90 million, and increase the money available for the arts. Because I remember when I went to school, I learned how to play an instrument playing in school. And we had a music class, and that was something that was incredibly rounding for me as a student in terms of cultural awareness, but also an activity. So my question, Leland, is when in the school, when you're on the school board, I know education's been a big thing for you. What steps were you involved in ensuring that there was expanded music opportunities for kids in SFUSD?
Well, Dennis, thanks for the question. As you can imagine, when we were facing budget cuts upon budget cuts, arts was the first thing to go. And oftentimes, what was really needed was all of us on the Board of Education getting together and saying to the superintendent, you can't do that. You just can't cut the arts program. And so each budget session, what we would end up having to do, just pretty much like the Board of Supervisors, there was a kind of like a, unspoken add-back process. We just persuaded the superintendent that you need to add some additional dollars into the budget for arts program. And it was only those kinds of threats that we were able to then get the superintendent to add those dollars back and then provide those kinds of programs. I think all of us understand that it's not enough to just simply educate kids with the academics, but arts is also very, very important.
Great. Thank you. I'm here to read the second question. Deborah Walker, I'm president of the San Francisco Arts Democratic Club. Funding for the arts, especially neighborhood